I'm Paddy McKeown. I'm a 26-year-old musician and visual artist from Belfast. Earliest memories of music would be, my dad would have played records on a Saturday morning religiously. This was the thing he did as a ritual, So you always would have woke up at 9 a.m. with something like Lunacy or Kate Bush or, Bach to Bob Marley or whatever. So I was always hearing a lot of music. He was a big lover of music, and then there was always like a guitar around the house. He would play a couple of chords, and I just picked it up and started playing. My first encounter with an instrument was my dad had this beautiful Italian mandolin, a real sort of antique one, and I covered the whole thing in emulsion paint, painted it blue, whole thing. And he was obviously raging about this. He's a painter. He does a couple of things. He paints sort of a lot of landscape painting and whatnot. But he loves music generally. He sort of really exposed me to a lot of traditional music, blues, rock, maybe even wee bits of jazz and classical. I think I started playing guitar when I was around 7 or so, and then I was going to the guitar group there when I was about 10. We actually did a concert at the Hilton Hotel with the Andrawhead guitar group, and we were playing with At First Light. So there's a whole bunch of us all strumming along, like 2 chords, to probably quite an intricate set of tunes or whatever, making a bit of a racket. But I would have been 10 or 11. I think that would have been my first time playing on stage, and then whenever I was in secondary school, we would have had spring concerts or whatever, and I would have been playing. I got quite into sort of early teens. I was listening to a lot like John Fahey and Bert Jansch, and sort of a lot of like American primitive fingerstyle guitar and whatnot. It's funny because, I was playing acoustic music and traditional music was always there, but I sort of, for a couple of years in my teens, dived off into electronic music, and I actually got really into drum and bass. And then I was doing like a drum and bass radio show at one point, which is really bizarre, because it's just kind of not obviously what I'm doing now, and it's a funny wee side story, to it. But and then I guess whenever I started gigging as a session musician properly whenever I was about 17 sort of, and I would have been going to the Sunflower, the likes of Kelly's with Desi Downey and whatnot, and I've just been still actively doing that, So the new session in the Orca Lines in the Argyll is in this wee bar in the back of the Argyll that's never had music. It was always traditionally like a space where people can go and just chat. But we have recently tried a session there, and it's amazing. People love it, and it's bringing in loads of musicians, and it's kind of a place where they can go, and you go in at 2 o'clock and it's this lovely wee cozy bar, and then the whole day is gone by when you've just been playing music. So that's going every Saturday, and yeah, we're enjoying it. think for me, I found playing with other people and in sessions the most kind of natural way of playing, because in other settings of, say, if you're playing classical music or whatever, there can be much more formal ways you kind of have to perform and stick to things. But the thing with trad music and playing with other people is that the social thing's great because you're building all these friendships and you're communicating with other people, and there's so much freedom to improvise on the tunes and sort of easy atmosphere to go into a session. And the thing as well about traditional music is that you often end up playing with people that you would sort of admire, your musical heroes or whatnot. Over time, you will then eventually be playing with them. That's just the nature of it. I think trad music is so important to Ireland, obviously, and this city in particular, because we have so much. Obviously, there's the sort of musical history of here, like Van Morrison and whatnot, but if you look at all that sort of output of musicians and the music they've written, it always normally does have a sort of underlying theme or it relates back to traditional music. Belfast is the kind of city where you can't avoid anyone, not for sort of bad reasons or whatever, but that's great because it creates this really healthy wee ecosystem in the trad world, so you've just got musicians who are always sharing music, playing together, and more often as well, musicians who are getting together and writing new music or arranging the music. I have over the years played different sort of arrangements with musicians and whatnot, and they're normally kind of musical relationships you build up through gigging, in a sense, so playing sessions. Now obviously I'm playing with the trio, we're really working on that. So the trio is myself, Conor McCauley and Kev McCullough. Kev is an amazing fiddle player who's been active here for many years. Conor as well is just an amazing drummer, and he has worked with loads of bands over the years and is always away touring with bands and whatnot in different areas of music, not just traditional, So it's really nice that we come together in that context, and we wouldn't say we're not we use traditional tunes. We all have a real interest in and a love for improvised music, free improvisation, and generally just experimental practices in music. So we take a tune, we'll sort of dissect it, talk about the tune, play it in different ways, figure out what can be done with it. I guess the end result is quite departed from the tune that we originally started off, So the sound, I think the trio sounds quite maximalist, in a way. It can be quite intense sounding, but we're very we listen to each other very intently, and we talk a lot about where we're going. So it's this, a misconception with improvised music is that people are like, oh, you're just, it's a free-for-all and you're making it up, But more often than not, you're actually working off very well worked out strategies and things you've discussed before, because most traditional musicians are improvising all the time, really. They're never playing a tune. You sort of physically can't. It's impossible. You can't play a tune the same way every time. Everyone's going to have their own unique sort of take on it, whether that's ornamentation or sort of wee embellishments they add to it. So I think, the sound that it's definitely, I don't know, it's quite dynamic, I guess. The album is called The Good Step. It was mostly recorded early 2020, but it was tunes that I had written or had been kind of floating around for a couple of years, you know. And I don't want to talk about the dreaded pandemic, you know, but it was the kind of time where I was able to do the recording and get it done. So the album is made up of 10 tunes. It's got similarities to trad for sure, but it's definitely not a trad album. It's just my own compositions and my own approach to those. A lot of people enjoy it who wouldn't necessarily be directly like linked to trad or would listen to trad as such. But then again, like as I said, it's not really a trad album, you know. But I was very lucky as well to get it pressed on vinyl, which has done a lot for it because people like that kind of physical thing, you know. They like to be able to hold the album and look at it and be like, wow, you know, it's blue, you know. And which you would think that's just, you know, it's whatever, but that's quite an important part to the record. I think for all records generally, you know. It tells a story, the whole kind of physical thing of it, and being able to look at the artwork and whatnot as well. I'm trying to work towards another solo album this year, and then I've got an album in the pipeline with the trio as well. I think when I'm writing music, my own music, it's a lot of it stems from improvising, so I'll play a lot and I'll work around shapes. So I'll sort of work around just a very simple sort of pattern in a particular tuning or mode, and a melody will almost form out of that. And as well, just having a good time with the music really, and doing a lot of playing. And then I think if you play enough and you're always kind of writing things and you've got ideas there and you're exploring how they can be, you know, they can be employed through different instrumentation, or what can be brought to them. It's going to come out naturally, you know. Just sort of knowing when it's the right time to put this thing down or take this thing up and play this piece and what have you, you know. And I think it's about decision making as well. A tune, you just have to say, this is how it's going to be now. I'm making the decision to record it like that. It may change, it doesn't have to be like that in the future. But then with the trio, with the trio, how we write, we just take tunes we played for years, and we'll write and think about them, talk about them. We sort of almost like take a tune and a deck of cards, you know, you sort of shuffle it and say, well, we'll put a section of the B part here, from the A part there, and work on these kind of rounds, you know. So my background I went to art college. I didn't study music. Yeah, so I studied sculpture in the art college, and then since when I was there as well, I was always playing music. I was still gigging. So, and I came out of that and just went straight into gigging. And as well with sculpture, like you need to have a show. Well, you don't have to, but it helps if you've got a show you're working towards, because then you can make a body of work. But we've done a couple of exhibitions group shows, myself and friends from college. It goes hand in hand with the music because a lot of the cover for the album actually as well is a sculpture from that show. And I've used images for various things with music and whatnot as well. Creating visuals for music or videos and whatnot. Creativity for me is just, especially for me, it's a collaborative thing, and new ideas, I guess, coming into existence. Expressing an idea, and hopefully that is going into a wider thing that also brings that out in others. I think there's plenty of opportunities in Belfast, and particularly for the music. I think the problem with Belfast, especially if artists, is space. There is a lack of space for artists. There's a lack of space for artists to feel secure in terms of their time there. I think artists are always sort of anxious about, well, they've only got a year in this space, so they're gonna have to get out, which isn't conducive towards creativity and just making good work, because there's always, you know, a sort of logistical problem of how are we gonna carry this on, where are we gonna move all this work to. I do know sometimes there is perhaps a lack of funding for individuals and organisations, and I think if the government just realised that, you know, if you put a bit more money into art and music, like, it will come back to you, you know. We are doing good things, and it contributes massively to the city and the culture here generally. So. The Duncairn is an amazing place. It's just non-stop. It's a powerhouse that brings musicians from all across the country together. They can make work together. There's time. You know, it's not like here's one evening gig. You have to sort out the rest yourself. The preparation work for rehearsals and whatnot. It's like, here's a whole weekend. You can have this massive room. You're going to do a gig in this room at the end of the weekend. So it really, I've built a lot of amazing connections and friendships with other musicians and artists from all across the country. I'm Paddy McKeown. I'm a legend. I'm a rock star. A bit of a rock star around these parts. Well, I just say, like, I'm Paddy McKeown. I'm a 26-year-old